There's a highway north of Los Angeles that was never built with a single streetlight. In daylight, it's one of the most scenic drives in Southern California. After dark, it becomes one of the most dangerous, and not just because the sun went down. The emptiness itself is what pulls the danger in. In 1929, construction started, and it was planned from day one as a fire access road, a way for crews to reach wildfires burning deep in the San Gabriel Mountains. Not a scenic drive, and definitely not a nighttime playground. Work stopped in 1941 for World War II, resumed in 1946, and the final stretch to Wrightwood didn't open until 1956, 27 years after the first shovel went in. Unemployed men during the Depression did much of the earliest grading, and later convict laborers from Camp 37, trustees nearing parole from Chino and San Quentin, took over the blasting and grading themselves, working without fences or armed guards, because, as one supervisor put it at the time, there was nowhere to escape to, and too much to lose by trying. That's the whole irony sitting underneath this road's night driving reputation. It was designed around daylight and emergency access, built slowly and deliberately by men focused on getting fire crews up a mountain, and every hazard that makes it dangerous after dark today is a byproduct of a purpose the road was never built to serve. Building it meant blasting straight through granite, one gully and ridgeline at a time, on equipment that would look laughably underpowered by modern standards. Crews cut as deep as 240 feet into solid rock in places, hauling debris out by hand and machine in equal measure, and built bridges across the gullies those cuts couldn't avoid. Near Islip Saddle, they bored 2 tunnels clean through a ridge, one 680 feet long, the other 470. Work that took specialized crews years to finish on top of everything else happening along the route. The road climbs to 7,901 feet at Dawson Saddle, the highest paved pass in the San Gabriels, on grades engineers had deliberately held under 7% for safety, even as the terrain around them refused to cooperate at every turn. The Angeles Crest was never supposed to stay this narrow and unprotected forever either. Planners in the 1950s wanted to eventually upgrade it into a full freeway, tying into State Route 39 further east, and giving the whole corridor the wider lanes, shoulders, and lighting a freeway normally comes with. Then, in 1978, a landslide permanently wiped out that connection to Route 39, and the freeway plan died with it, leaving Angeles Crest exactly as narrow and exposed as its 1956 completion had left it. Add to this that the road spent 4.5 years closed between 2005 and 2009, after back-to-back winter storms in 2004 and 2006 caused landslides and a complete washout of a section of roadway, damage that ran past $10 million to repair and left the U.S. Forest Service worried about its own ability to fight fires. In terrain the road was originally built to reach. When the highway finally reopened in May 2009, engineers had built a new bridge over the worst of the slide zone, specifically designed to let future landslides slip underneath the roadway instead of taking it out again. What never got engineered away through any of it was the road's original shape: narrow 2 lanes, no meaningful shoulder, and never widened into the safer, better lit freeway that the 1978 landslide made impossible to ever build. So why does the exact same stretch of asphalt behave completely differently once the sun goes down? It comes down to something almost embarrassingly simple. There is not one streetlight anywhere along the entire 66-mile route. Not at the tunnels, not at the hairpins, not at Dawson Saddle's summit. In daylight, a driver approaching a blind curve or a hairpin turn can often spot an oncoming car's headlights bouncing off the canyon walls, seconds before it's actually there, enough warning to ease off the accelerator before the 2 cars meet. At night, that same reflection is the only warning at all, and it arrives just as late whether you're paying attention or not. On a road bordered for most of its length by unprotected drop-offs with no guardrail to catch a mistake, and no ambient light from any town or street lamp to soften how total the darkness actually is once you're a few miles past the last porch light in La Cañada. Here's the part that makes Angeles Crest genuinely different from just another dark mountain road. The emptiness itself is the attraction, not just a side effect of the hour. A dedicated canyon running community, drivers and riders who treat mountain roads like their own private track, specifically seeks this highway out late at night and early on Sunday mornings, precisely because that's when it's empty enough to run. For decades, a roadside diner called Newcomb's Ranch, built in 1939 and closed in 2020, served as the community's unofficial gathering point, a place where serious drivers compared notes between runs before heading back out into the dark. Locals and online forums describe an unspoken code among the serious canyon runners. Stay in your lane, never cross the double yellow. But admit the code doesn't stop copycats from drifting into oncoming lanes anyway. Treating a public mountain highway with sheer, unprotected drop-offs like a closed racetrack it was never built to be. Most drivers slow down when there's no one else around to react to. Canyon runners speed up for exactly the same reason, which is precisely backwards from how danger is supposed to work on an empty road. An empty road at 2 a.m. reads to one driver as a moment to finally relax, and to another as the one window all week where nobody's around to get in the way of an apex he's been chasing for months. Both of them are using the same 66 miles of pavement at the same hour, with the same total absence of light, and only one of them is expecting to meet oncoming traffic doing triple the posted limit through a blind hairpin. The danger isn't simply that it's dark. The same emptiness that makes the road feel safer to a nervous tourist is exactly what draws in the drivers least interested in being safe, turning the quietest hours into the ones where a head-on collision is most likely to involve someone going far too fast for the road they're on. The 2009 reopening quietly banned something else too. Large trucks, anything with 3 or more axles or over 4.5 tons along a stretch of the highway, imposed specifically to cut down on the size and severity of the collisions happening on grades and curves that were never engineered with modern commercial vehicles in mind. It was a narrow fix for a narrow road, addressing one variable in a much longer list of ones nobody has fully solved. Getting help to a crash out here takes longer than it would almost anywhere else in Los Angeles County, and a canyon runner losing control at 2 a.m. is exactly the kind of crash that finds out how much longer. Cell coverage along the route is sporadic at best, thinned out by the same mountains and distance from towers that make the drive scenic in the first place. A crash that would trigger an instant 911 call in the city might mean a driver has to travel miles down the mountain before getting a signal at all, sometimes past several dead zones in a row, and rescue crews then have to cover that same distance in reverse, on the same narrow, unlit road that caused the crash to begin with, often navigating hairpins by patrol car headlight with no idea exactly how far down a slope a vehicle might have gone until they're standing at the edge looking for skid marks. CBS Los Angeles, citing CHP data, reported 1,800 accidents on the Angeles Crest Highway over a 5-year span, 33 of them fatal. A documentary filmmaker who tracks roadside memorials along the route has counted at least 18 so far, with more still uncounted, scattered across a highway that shares its accident data with several connecting canyon roads, making the true regional total harder to pin down than the headline figure suggests. Motorcycle crashes cluster heavily on Sunday mornings, exactly when the canyon runners are out in force, while the broader accident pattern skews toward ordinary commuter hours during the week. A reminder that the danger here isn't only about thrill seekers, it's baked into the road itself, in its blind curves and total absence of shoulder, regardless of who happens to be driving it that day. Fatigue turned out to be just as lethal as speed on roads like this. In the pre-dawn hours of December 8th, 2004, a van carrying 10 Jet Propulsion Laboratory employees on their commute from the Antelope Valley went off the road near where the Angeles Forest Highway meets the crest, on a stretch just as dark and just as unlit as the rest of the route. The California Highway Patrol determined the driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, exhausted from an early start and a long shift ahead of him, the kind of ordinary tiredness that has nothing to do with racing and everything to do with simply needing to get to work before sunrise. 3 of the 10 people in that van died. It's precisely the combination this road punishes hardest after dark. A tired driver, zero ambient light to jolt the senses awake, and nothing between the shoulder and a steep, unforgiving drop to interrupt a moment of lost attention before it becomes fatal. Not everyone out here is chasing an apex. Volunteers through Caltrans Adopt a Highway program clear trash and debris along the heavily used lower section, and they do it early on weekday morning, in daylight, on purpose. Nobody schedules that work for after dark on a road with no shoulder lighting and blind curves every few hundred feet. The same absence of light that draws canyon runners in at night keeps everyone else, volunteers included, firmly on a daytime schedule. Not every crash out here has happened in the dark. In December 2025, Call of Duty co-creator Vince Zampella died when his Ferrari exited an ice-slip saddle tunnel too fast in broad daylight and hit a concrete barrier, one more entry in the road's long history of high-speed driving, day or night. The road's reputation has a darker edge too, briefly. It's occasionally served as a body drop site in unrelated cases, including model Linda Sobeck's in 1995. And on a lighter note, it's doubled on camera as the French Alps in 1969's The Love Bug and appeared as itself in Donnie Darko. Drive the Angeles Crest Highway after dark today, and you're on the same fire road California built in 1929, just with none of the daylight it was designed around, and none of the freeway upgrade a 1978 landslide made impossible. No streetlights across 66 miles, thin cell coverage that slows down every rescue, and a stretch of empty pavement that draws in exactly the drivers most likely to test it precisely because it's empty. The road didn't change after the sun went down. Everything protecting you from its original, unfinished design did.